Hi, and welcome to a Small Medium at Large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Heisen, bringing you intimate stories that heal. I want to thank all of you subscribers, listeners, for your comments, sharing our stories, and sending in information about other guests that we might have. Today, we have a very special guest, and I want to tell you a little bit about her. Our guest today comes to us from Australia, and her name is Annie Bourke. Annie Bourke is an international best-selling author. Her two books, The Bridge to Animal Consciousness and Evolving Hearts and Soul, The Guide to Spiritual Awakening. Annie is an animal communicator, and animals living and in spirit to convey messages and provide peace of mind for them and their human parents. Animals are her passion, and her mission is to raise global awareness of the importance of animals. She loves deepening relationships between animals and humans. She provides distant healing support for animals and humans, and she has a podcast, What Animals Tell Me. She's a certified clinical aromatherapist, Reiki master, medical intuitive, clairvoyant, and a medium. So let's welcome Annie here today. Hi, Annie.
Hi, Gail. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
It's just a pleasure. I know you had to get up early to get our time scheduled, and I really appreciate that you're doing that since you're down under. How is your weather there right now?
It's very warm. It's our summer.
Oh,
I've actually
wonderful.
got a fan on next to me at the moment just because of the humidity. So it's very, very warm.
Nice. I went to Australia, I guess it must have been about 35 years ago, and we traveled all around. I think we covered about 2,000 miles, and we brought our daughter, and we had just an absolutely fantastic trip there. I really, really was a beautiful country. I just wished I would have had more time to go even further, but maybe we'll get back there again someday. So I wanted to start off with, like I do with a lot of my guests, is I want to know, in your childhood and when you were growing up, did you have animals around? Did you have any medium or psychic type experiences? Was there things that happened, trauma, incidents, or anything that really brought you to this point in your life as an adult to write these books and follow this path of mediumship with animals?
Great question. Okay. When I was 18 months old, I actually snuck out of a cabin that I was staying in with my grandmother and brother. We were on a family holiday to go out to look at the water and look at the birds. And so from a young age, I've been very attracted to water and to animals. And I've got a photo of me aged 4 meeting kangaroos for the first time. So animals have been my passion for as long as I can remember. And I've had a lot of cats in my lifetime. We've also had guinea pigs and mice as pets. But cats I have a big affinity with, and bears. So whenever I go to a zoo, I always want to go and see the bears and the big cats first, and then everything else is a bonus. I've always thought that my animals could talk to me, and I just wish that I could talk to them. And I actually used to say to my cats, I wish I could speak cat. And your question about gifts, yes, from a young age, I was a claircognizant, which means, for listeners who haven't heard the term before, that I would just know things without any rational explanation how I would know. So I was just always right. I used to drive my family nuts. But yeah, just uncanny. And I had no idea that it was a gift. I just knew what the answer was. So that was very interesting. And what brought me into animal communication, I had a little ginger girl cat, and apparently something like 97% of ginger cats are boys. So it was very rare to have a ginger girl. So she was very special. And she sadly passed away after a very short illness. And I just felt as though I'd missed the opportunity to get to know her and find out why she was with me, because I didn't know how to communicate with her. So she inspired me to look for an animal communication course, and I found one. And on the website was an image of a ginger cat who looked exactly like her. And I thought, okay, this is a sign from the universe that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I started the course, and I had 2 cats with me at the time. So they became my very patient teachers as I went through lots of different exercises and started understanding the different ways that animals can communicate telepathically. And because I can talk to animals in spirit, I have spoken to her since, because I just did feel as though I'd missed that opportunity with her. And she just said, no regrets. That was her role to guide me into that path, because she knew that's what my path was. So she was just really happy that I'd taken that step, and that's what I was doing, because that is my life purpose, making a difference for animals and helping their humans to better understand them. And with doing all of that work, other gifts have opened as well, including clairsentience. So it means now when I'm having a conversation with an animal, I can actually ask them to let me feel what they're feeling on a physical level and on an emotional level. And then I feel their physical pain in my body, and I can feel their emotions. And so particularly when the human parents don't know what's happening with their animal, I can say, well, this is what they're feeling, and that helps guide then how they're managed to help. So all of those things have just progressed and amplified as I've continued my work.
Was your family supportive? I understand. I have to say, one of the wonderful things about having a show like this is that I get to hear people say things that are exactly what it's like for me. And
Yes,
there's something about it that is the camaraderie or whatever it is that makes you feel really good to know
kindred
that
spirits.
somebody else says the same words. I just knew these things. And when
Yes.
people ask me and I say, I can't tell you how, I just know.
Yeah.
And they can't really grasp it. But when I'm speaking with you, you know exactly what we're speaking about because you had the same growing up experience.
Yes. Uh, And it was interesting because my clairvoyant gift switched on when I had my spiritual awakening. And at the time, I didn't know that you could have a spiritual awakening. And I didn't know that's what I was experiencing. But I'd just be having conversations with people, and I could see into their past and I could see into their future. And I'm thinking, what is this? And what am I supposed to do with it? And I spoke to a few people at the time, and they said, oh, no, don't dabble in that. So I listened to them, and I stopped for years. And then a very intuitive friend found a course being advertised for spiritual development. And she said, I thought you might be interested in this. So I went along, my clairvoyance switched back on, and a whole lot of other gifts switched on as well. And I've just been on this fascinating learning journey since, like a spiritual junkie. I'm just interested in all modalities of healing. So that's why I've done the crystal therapy and clinical aromatherapy and the Reiki, all sorts of energetic healing.
So how old were you when you started to have your spiritual awakening?
That, yeah, with the claircognizance, with just knowing things, that
Mhm.
was from a really young age, so probably about 5 or 6. But then the clairvoyance would have switched on, years after that. And then just everything else is amplified. And I think I made the commitment in May last year to leave my full-time government job to be able to work in my business full-time, because that's my purpose. I'm here on the planet to make a difference for animals, and working full-time means that I only have very limited time to be able to do that. And so I just felt I needed to take that step, and really step into what I'm here on the planet to do. And I think with doing that, that some more of my gifts have amplified. So that's, just been confirmation that I'm on the right path and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But yes, getting back to your question about how did the family take it, some members were very supportive and some members are very skeptical. And I just accept that, everyone's different. They're all on their own paths of evolution, and where they're at is where they're at. So I've got a close circle of friends who do understand what I'm doing, and they're very supportive. So
I
I'm
think it's
happy
very
with that.
important. Also, I have a similar thing where I used to do medical diagnosis when I was a teenager on stage, and all they would tell me is the name and the age and the city they were in, and I would tell them everything medically that was wrong with the persons. And I did that volunteer for almost 2 years. And then similar to you, I just stopped because things were happening and I didn't understand them. And it was later that I then again picked up different retreats and courses and things that helped to really validate the experiences that some of us are having when we're having openings and spiritual awakenings. And I think that's important for people to know, that you may stop off that path for a little while, but that doesn't mean you can't get right back on and continue down and find other teachers and people to help you with your development. So I'm glad that you got back on your horse, so to speak.
Same here. And, at the time I felt, I've wasted like 10 years doing nothing, but everyone says it just all happens in divine timing, that things happen that you're meant to go off and do other things and then come back to it. So, and, I've made up for it since with going to lots of different courses and just absorbing as much information as I can, working with different spiritual mentors. And it's what drove me to write my second book, Evolving Hearts and Souls, The Guide to Spiritual Awakening, because when I woke up, there wasn't really like a dummy's guide to what happens when weird stuff starts to happen to you. And I just wanted something to help people so that they don't feel so out of control and feel as though they're going crazy when they experience things that they've never experienced before. So it's just sharing some of my experiences. The book can be read in any particular order, it doesn't matter, but it will help activate people, and it just helps confirm that some of what they're experiencing is exactly normal. And from my experience and with talking to others, and you've probably experienced the same thing, that it can feel very lonely when you're waking up because you have a new understanding of reality that a lot of people don't have. And that is quite daunting when you've got to redesign your whole understanding of reality. And the same thing happened to me when I experienced animal soul reincarnation. I had no idea that that could happen until one of my cats let me experience it. And I'm sure that she did that so that I would know that it happened and so that I could write about it, but also now help a lot of animal parents who are grieving for their animals, because although not every animal soul does reincarnate, a lot of them do. And so when I have a conversation with them in spirit, if they know that they're coming back, they can tell me what body they're coming back into, what gender, what colour, and a time frame, and sometimes where their parents might be able to find them. And so I can then pass that information on. And that's just one of the highlights of my work with bereaved animal parents, is being able to tell them that their animal is going to come back, and then seeing the photos once they're back in their new bodies. It just makes me cry because my soul recognizes that that beautiful soul has come back to have another lifetime with their family. And that's just absolutely wonderful. And it's just so powerful for the grief process, both for the animal and the human, to be reunited again.
I've thought that in some of them, I've had many dogs, and a couple of just one or two cats. But some of the times it feels like my other animal came back to me in the body of this next animal.
Yes,
And
and I'm going buzzy while you're saying that. So that's my soul confirming that's the absolute truth. So
yes, and I have a list of sort of questions in order, but I'm deviating a little bit right now because of this topic. I want to know, do you think that any of as we're talking about spirits and animals and knowing they reincarnate, just like maybe humans are reincarnating, do you think that, I've always wondered, is the consciousness or the spirit or the energetic field or something, do you think that anytime we have animals, that sometimes there's actually a human entity that went into their body, or the spirit of, I don't mean like Fred dies and all of a sudden the cat's born and he's a complete Fred. I don't mean it quite like that. I mean it more like there's some essence of that soul that might enter the form of an animal instead of necessarily reincarnating right into another human body or something.
yep. And again, that's a really good question. And fortunately, I've had lots of experience with people who have experienced the same thing, and we've worked out who it actually is in the body of their animal. So my understanding with conversations with animals in spirit and humans in spirit is that we incarnate either as an animal or a human. So basically, we're all souls, and we choose whether we come in a human body or an animal body. And from the conversations that I've had, animals may have a human soul that's incarnated in them, or they may have an animal soul that's incarnated in them. So I've spoken with animals where it's been a human relation, like a grandmother that's come back in the animal. And I've got a number of clients where they've got their grandmothers in their dogs or their cats or even a horse, so that they can come back and be with them in a different form, but still have that connection with their grandchild. Also fathers and mothers. And I've had a few where it's actually been a baby that's passed away very early, like prematurely, or even a baby from a previous lifetime who only had a very short lifetime with their human. And so they've chosen to come back again and have another longer lifetime with their human. So I don't know whether your listeners are familiar with past lives or not, but again, that's what animals have taught me, that some of them have had very long connections with us over thousands of years with our lifetimes intermingling. And I've had that experience with one of my cats, who was my original animal communication teacher. And he showed me that we'd actually worked in the Great Pyramid together thousands of years ago. He was a cat and I was a human. And he's had some human lifetimes with me, and he's had animal lifetimes with me. So basically, the souls just interweave through time. And for people who have a very intense grief reaction with their animal, I find that they're ones that they've had these long soul connections with. It just makes sense that some animals may be newer souls and we haven't had past relationships with them, but some of them we definitely have these very strong bonds. And so when the soul comes into the body, the animals again have taught me that it's a higher evolved version of the soul that we had that previous lifetime with, because they're here with a life purpose and soul lessons to learn, just like we are. And so once they pass over, they've mastered those lessons, they integrate them. So when they come back, they're at a higher evolved level. So some of them look exactly the same, and that can be very confusing, and people keep calling them by their old name and not their new name just because they do look so similar. Sometimes they're completely different. I've got one client whose cat wanted to come back as a dog because she felt that she was missing out on by being a cat. She wanted to go to dog cafes, she wanted to go on walks, and she wanted to go away with the family on holidays. So she's come back as a dog. She had to come back as a male because that was the body that was available for her. And often they do have to change gender, and sometimes they're not exactly thrilled about coming back as the opposite sex, but because they want to come back to their humans, they accept that. So that's what they do. And someone else I've spoken with, his dog has come back in his cow, and he comes running up to him like a dog, uh, and expresses very similar behaviours. And it's absolutely fascinating when they come home, because they know you, they know the other members of the family, including the other animals. And it's as though they've just been away on a temporary holiday. They've had a full body makeover and they're back. And yes, the whole dynamics of the family change, because, you know, that may have been the oldest one who passed away, and now they come back in a young body. And so they might be the youngest in the family, but they just re-establish their bonds very quickly. Like within a couple of days, they're settled in. They know where the beds are. They know where the bathroom is. They know where you feed them. It's just really interesting. And I have actually spoken to them to find out what it feels like coming back again. And they've got to get into a new body. And so it feels different being in a different body, and they smell different. But basically,
I
they're...
just want to say, there's something you said earlier in this particular things we're talking about right now, about how your cat was the one who came back to teach you that you can communicate to animals. And I just want our listeners to know that not only do I believe what she's saying about this, I mentioned this once, I'm not sure if it was on my show or if when I was a guest on a show, but I used to always wonder about when people always said, because for me, it's auditory and I just know things, or I see it in my screen in my mind, or I hear things. But I always kept wondering, what is this? Just because it hasn't happened to me, I'm not sure if it's real or not, but people always said, they could see the deceased spirit, or they see the soul of somebody floating around in their house, or they see an actual visual. And so I kept saying, how come I have all this psychic stuff, how come I've never had a visual? I want to see a visual. And when my dog Charlie, because I've been fortunate to mostly have my animals die in my arms, except for my recent loss of a dog. But this was some years ago, and it was my dog Charlie, and my dogs always live years longer than they're supposed to. So maybe they're supposed to live 10 years, so they'll live 12 years, or like this. And he's in my lap outside, and I know he's dying, and some of my family's around, and they say, oh no, maybe this is happening or that. I said, no, this is death. This is him dying. And I look over and I see his whole youthful body leap out of the dying body, and I visually see it all for the first time. And I'm going, oh my God, Charlie, you're showing me the question that I had. How do you see these spirits? And he jumped out, and he was as youthful and happily alive. But when I looked down, there was a body dying in my lap. And he went dancing around. I live in 15 acres, and he went dancing around and went running off into the orchard. And I was so grateful that he answered my question and taught me this visual experience. So I just want our listeners to know that not only are you doing things teaching your dog, but there are things your animals can be teaching you that are of many different levels.
And that's exactly right. That's a beautiful story. I was just going buzzy listening to you, and I've got tears. So it's just lovely that he shared that experience with you. So a few things in response to that. When I talk to animals in spirit, they go through a healing process when they pass over. So even animals who may have been very immobile before they pass, they will get physical healing on the other side and emotional healing, whatever they need. And so when I see them there, they're actually running around like, young puppies and young kittens and absolutely embracing life. So all of their physical ailments, whether they had cancer or respiratory problems or whatever it was, that all gets healed so that they're back to being healthy and young. And the only thing they miss is their humans and their family. But they're completely healed. And they can come back and visit us on an energetic level to reassure us, A, that they have transitioned safely, and B, that the soul endures, and C, they want to stay close to us. So again, a number of people have told me that they've physically seen their animals in spirit in the house. Mm-hmm. And they haven't explained yet how they do this, because somehow they put on a temporary physical body so that we can actually see them and recognize them. But they don't own a physical body anymore. They're a soul in spirit. But somehow they can do that. And so many people have seen them. And it just really reassures them that they're not going crazy and hallucinating when I tell them that they're not alone. And a lot of people have experienced that. Some people hear their animals in spirit. So when my girl who passed over used to come back before she reincarnated, she used to meow so that I could hear her and know that she was there. And my boy cats knew that she was there. They'd just be staring and looking at something that I couldn't see and not threatened. So I knew that she was there. My boy cat who passed over used to come back and play with my hair very softly on the back of my head, because that's what he used to do as a kitten. He used to sleep on my pillow and gently massage my head through the night. So he'll come through and he'll play with my hair, and then I'll know that he's there. He's also reincarnated, but he still comes and does those visits as well. And that's really fascinating to me, that there's an aspect of them that's in spirit that I can connect with, but then there's an aspect of them in the animal that's come back that I can also connect with. So the aspects of the soul, and that I've had years to get my head around some of these experiences that I've had, because you just can't explain them. But yes, I can talk to the one who's in spirit, and I can talk to the aspect of them who's here. Two different voices, but aspects of the same soul.
I have a lot more questions about your podcast and your books.
Yep.
And other animal questions, but I have one question before we continue on with animals. Mm-hmm. Is I've had this experience, and I'm wondering if you've ever communicated with the insect world. And with things like butterflies and dragonflies and, because I don't know if people think I'm crazy or whatever, but I know that I've talked to a dragonfly and I know
Yep.
that I've healed a butterfly, and it all sounds crazy, but it's all in the invisible.
Yep.
And it's such a tiny little thing, but yet there's some kind of connection or something that happens.
Mhm. And yes, so they have souls and we can communicate with them. So unfortunately I get spiders in my house and my cats think it's fabulous and they just sit there waiting for them to fall so they can go and catch them. And I don't want them to catch them. So I talk to the spiders and ask if they can go and move where my cats can't see them. And I get little tiny lizards in the house called geckos. And the same thing, my cats look up at them and think, come down closer to me. I want to catch you. So again, I ask them to move and be in safety somewhere. So yes, you can talk to them and they understand. Once you know how to communicate with an animal telepathically, and whether you hear their voice verbally or whether they're sending you images about what they want to tell you, then you can talk to any animal anywhere. So I spend a lot of time at zoos talking to the animals there. So all sorts of different animals, and I've connected with animals in the wild. So they all seem to universally understand the language that you speak. I was at a zoo and an emu came up to me and he started going woomph, 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 woomph with the noise that they do. And I thought, oh dear, I don't speak emu. So I had to connect with him and say, thank you. I can't speak emu, but if you'd like to tell me in English, if you can, or if you can show me what you want to tell me, then I can understand. And they haven't explained the advanced thought transference technology yet that they use, but somehow they put little videos in my head. So I either hear their voices in my head, it's not audible in my ear, it's in my head when it's
Exactly.
telepathic, or they can send images, pictures of different things. They can send these little video snippets. They can send emotions and feelings that they're feeling, or somehow you just know intuitively what the answer is. So there's all sorts of ways that they can communicate telepathically with us, in addition to using their body language and their eyes and changes in behavior, because they're the only options they've got to try and tell us something until we can communicate with them effectively.
And these, people who are not interested in this sort of thing, but people that are on the science end of all this, they're doing amazing things with animals now, helping them to detect, if a person's going to have an epileptic seizure, or if there's things that where, and the dog can actually smell and be trained to sense the incident that may be coming, and it helps the person prevent them from going into a seizure. They're also allowing animals, support. I mean, there's the line of where people just want to take their pet, but then there is the line where the pet is truly an emotional support animal. And they're allowed now to go on planes and I mean, there's been a whole other level of acceptances of animals and their abilities to be with people that was not there before. And I just mean in mainstream. I don't mean, in say alternative. And I think that that's showing how there's a whole new level of respect for what the animal or dog plays in your, I know some people would think that if you're crying for days over the loss of a dog, that there's something wrong with you because it's just an animal. But people are starting to really grasp that they're not just an animal, that they have a lot more to give. So I want to go down my little line of questions here.
Mhm.
Uh, so I was wondering if you could explain to the listeners who may not understand, what is the telepathic communications and what are the benefits of this communication that you're having with these animals?
Okay, so telepathic communication is silent. So when I'm having a conversation with an animal, no one would know. It's all in my head. But I liken it to tuning into the frequency of an old-fashioned radio station. We all vibrate at a certain frequency, animals and humans. So to me, it's tuning into the frequency of that particular soul. I connect with animals through photographs. So I just get people to send me a photo of their animal so I can see their face with their eyes open, and then I can tune into them. communication is a free will thing for animals. So I can't force them to have a conversation. I can't force them to answer certain questions if they don't want to. So I have to respect what their boundaries are. But every domestic animal I've spoken with has been more than happy to talk to me and answer their humans' questions. But it also gives them an opportunity to share what they've been wanting to tell their human for ages and just haven't had the opportunity to. And so, as I said, you can hear their voices in your head, and they've all got different voices, just like humans. So I can tell when they're smiling. Some of them laugh. I've even had a horse sing some of her answers to me, which I wasn't expecting at all. So some of them are real practical jokers. You just never know what they're going to say. I spoke with a horse who ran into an electric fence and he burnt himself on his chest. So he was in pain, and he said to me, "Oh, that was shocking." And like he totally understood the pun on shocking. Like they're just so intelligent. They have a really sophisticated understanding of English. So I never know what they're going to tell me. I just have to go in expecting the unexpected now. And so however they tell me the messages, that's their communication from them to me. And there's just so many benefits. Like you can find out, is there a change? If there's a change in behavior, why is it happening? Now, I'm not a vet and I'm not an animal behaviorist, but because I'm a communicator, I can just ask. And often it's toileting changes, because that's the most effective way to get the human's attention if you're not toileting where you're supposed to. And every animal I've spoken to who's done that, they're not doing it deliberately to be naughty. There is a reason behind why they're doing it. So whether it's a medical reason or an energetic reason, there will be something that they're trying to get a message through to their parents, and that's the way they've chosen to do it. If there's a health issue, we can find out what's actually happening. And sometimes our animals actually take on some of our health symptoms for us so that they can help us to get better quicker, even though we haven't asked them to do that. And I've experienced that myself with two of my animals taking on things for me, and I had no idea they were doing that. But I've also had that happen with a lot of humans. So I'm at the point now when someone tells me that their animal's got certain symptoms, I just say, who else in the household has the same symptoms? Because it's just uncanny. They just do it to be of service and to help us, but it's just something beautiful that they do.
I just want to say that I really believe that I kept saying it, that maybe my dog is doing this. Maybe my dog is, and my little Chihuahua, who was only 6 pounds, he got glaucoma, and I have glaucoma, and I've been keeping it at bay for many years. I've had it a long time, and I've never had to use drops or do anything until recently. And it all sort of came about as his glaucoma, which we didn't know he had until we brought him had to bring him to a special eye doctor. A vet doesn't even detect this. And when we discovered he was losing his eyesight to glaucoma, and he sleeps with me every night on my pillow next to me, there was nothing more that I could feel than that. 14 years we'd been together, that I was sure he was taking some of it from me. It wasn't that my glaucoma wasn't going to go away, but it was more like that it wouldn't go to the degree that it could have gone to. And I truly felt, I'm starting to cry when I think about it, but I truly felt that he was trying to assist me and help.
Yep, I'm going buzzy hearing your story. So again, that's my soul confirming the truth. So, and there's no coincidences with that. I spoke to someone recently who's caring for someone with diabetes and pancreatitis. Not long later, her cat has diabetes and pancreatitis. And the soul who's in her cat actually knows the person who's ill and is deliberately taking on the symptoms to help that human. Now, there's no coincidence. Why would an animal suddenly get the same two conditions that a human has? So I think a lot of this happens. I've spoken to another dog, and she was actually in 9 out of 10 intensity pain in her hip. Physically, there's nothing wrong with her hip. Her mum has chronic pain. She's taking that on for her mum. So once we know that they're taking it on energetically, then it's a matter of thanking them for doing it and for helping us, but explaining that we would be a lot happier and a lot less stressed if they would stop doing that, because we want them to be happy and healthy. And I said that to my girl cat who was taking on symptoms for me, and her response was, "Are you sure?" So she she was committed to continuing to help me in whatever way she could. So they're just beautiful, humble souls who are here. And some of them are here to do healing work with us. Some of them are here to teach us so that once we can communicate with them, then they can teach us what they need to know. And some of them are here to guard us and protect us. And, you know, I've spoken with cats and dogs who actually growl when someone comes to the house that they don't like the energetic vibes of, and they're telling their humans, you know, just be careful with this one. And those animals seem to be the ones that are very prone to separation anxiety, because once you're not there, they feel as though they're failing in their guard duty. They don't know where you're gone. They don't know when you're coming back. They don't know if you're coming back. And again, particularly if it's an animal who's had abandonment issues from a previous experience, that can be very stressful for them. So that's another thing I tell people is if you're going out, whether you're going out to the shops or you're going away for a few days, let your animals know. They understand everything that we say. A lot of people doubt that and they think, oh yeah, they're just an animal. They understand walk and know, and that's it. But no, they really understand everything that we say. So if we can say, I'm going out to the shops for 2 hours, I'm buying you some dog food and some treats, and I'll be back in 2 hours, they know where you've gone and they know you've said that you're going to be coming back. That just
They know
alleviates
even when you
stress.
you haven't even gotten dressed yet, and they sense that they just know you're leaving before you've even gotten
Yep.
prepared to leaving.
Yep.
I rescued a dog who I call Bruno, who's about 87 pounds. He's a big pit bull mixed, I think, with some sort of giant, very giant other dog. I can't remember the name right this, a bull mastiff. And I had a stroke, a mild stroke, about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And I rescued him like a month after the stroke, while I was sitting in my house, petrified and full of anxiety that, oh, is my brain going to all of a sudden do this, or am I just going to die tomorrow, or some kind of crazy thing? And I got out of the couch and I said, we have to go to the pound right now. There's a dog waiting for me. And we went and found Bruno, that wasn't his name. And I felt like I rescued him and he rescued me. It was a two-way situation here. It was not a one-way situation. And he never barked for 2 months. We didn't even know if he was going to bark. And one day when he finally barked, we were like, who was that? You know, it was such a big bark. And we watched all the healing over the months of his fears, that he wouldn't go through a narrow space. So these are things you figure must have had to do with the trauma of why he was, he was 3 years old when we got him and what he'd been through, but he wasn't like physically abused kind, but it was some other traumas that he went through. And I kept asking him, where were you? Can you tell me, And as he got better and I got better, and we both got so bonded. And then I had to fly to New York, upstate New York, to Bethel, where I was going for a book release party about the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, because I had been in this book and had attended this concert. And when I called home, my husband said the dog would not eat. Bruno didn't eat for 3 days. And I was so worried that I felt so attached with him that I was going to just jump on a plane and go home. And fortunately, that morning he ate, But I've never had, in all my dogs, no dog ever did anything like that. I'd go away, they'd be sad, they'd be happy you come back. But this dog, it's like a deep, heartfelt thing. And he's got to, I tried talking to him on the phone,
Yep. And that happens. I talk about rescuing the rescues, who is rescuing who, because there's no coincidence that they come into our lives, and some of them are coming to heal us, even though we may be totally unaware of that. But yes, separation anxiety is a real thing. And yes, having a conversation on the phone, I've actually suggested that to someone whose cat was experiencing severe separation anxiety. So she FaceTimed the cat, and so the cat could hear mum's voice.
Yes.
I also suggested having something out with mum's scent on it, like a dressing gown, so that he could be reassured by the scent, because they're so sensitive to smell. And he just loved that. So every time mum goes away now, she tells him, because they understand the concept of time. So if you say, look, I'm going away for 2 sleeps, Dad will be looking after you, they know to count down 2 sleeps till you're back again. But having something with your scent on it and being able to hear your voice voice just really reassures them as well. And again, it's that thing that, if they're there to guard you and you're not there, if they hear your voice and they know that you're going to be coming back, then that really helps them cope.
I think I used to do that with a nightgown, leave them one of my nightgowns, and that really does give them some sort of a comfort. I encourage that. I want to jump to a bigger animal right now,
Mhm.
which is the horse. Now, I don't know anything about this, and maybe you can tell our listeners. The only two things I know is that I had watched the film Horse Boy, which is about an autistic child who's taken to a remote area of Mongolia, which I myself have actually been to also, but was not able to get up to the reindeer shaman, which is where this child was brought to. There was a storm going and we couldn't cross Lake Kovsko, way up, way far away from the capital of Mongolia. And, you're out in the outland there or whatever. And what these family did was they brought their little boy, I think he was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and the shaman picked him up and put him on the horse. And when he got on the horse, something happened in a connection between this little boy and the horse, and it did a partial healing of his autism. And the parents, it's an amazing movie if anyone has a chance to see it. It shows how the parent, they didn't get rid of autism. It's not that, it's that the horse was able to bring the child to a level of communication that now the parents could play with their child for the first time and have some kind of a connection. And I was at a retreat, and that was the first horse story I'd ever heard of. And then I was at a retreat in Kansas that was all on Native American land called Council Grove. And it's where the Native American tribes used to all meet to have counsel with each other. So many tribes would come together there. So it was a powerful, energetic place. And the conference was going on, and I felt like I needed a rest. And so I went out, and there was this group of horses. And I didn't know what the horses were there for, but these people had driven them 2 states over to come and be there. And they said that they were therapy horses. And I had never heard of therapy horses, but I thought, how nice. And they were standing outside. So I took my jaw harp and I said, well, I was in Mongolia. I learned to play the jaw harp, and horses seem to be the connection with Mongolia. I'll go play this jaw harp. So I went to the horses and I said, I'm playing this for you, for Mongolia and you. And I play this jaw harp for them. I feel this lovely thing. And then I leave. Later that afternoon, I think I'm doing the jaw harp on one of the guests that's in the conference. And these people come up and say, we heard you, we were in our tent. You were making that sound to our horses. And I didn't know if it was a bad thing. I said, yeah, I thought it would be a nice thing that maybe they would like it. She said, it was wonderful. After you left, our horses went to sleep, and they haven't slept through the whole journey, and we really needed them to get some rest. They said they're therapy horses. They do healing with people. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on any of that, because it was the first time and only time I've ever heard about horses being and driven in trailers to go to places and do healing therapy with people.
Mhm.
Do
So
you know
yes,
anything about that?
yeah, some animals are here to be healers. So you spoke before about the animals being trained as assistance dogs. And yes, they work in a variety of capacities to help humans. So yes, they can detect with diabetics if their blood sugar levels are getting to a dangerous level. They can tell with people that have had post-traumatic stress disorder if their cortisol levels are getting too high with their stress levels. And so then they're trained to actually remove them from that situation and take them to somewhere that's calmer. There's all sorts of things that they can detect to help with our health issues because they're so sensitive to our changes in our body. And horses are no different. They're very intuitive about who needs healing. And so I know several people that use horses as therapy for humans. They instinctively know who needs to have their input. They're very good with children. And so if you take a group of children with disabilities to them, they'll know who they need to go and spend time with. They radiate this amazing energy out of their bodies, and you're just standing in their presence, and that energy affects your energy field, and so they can do the healing. So some of them are very powerful healers. So that doesn't surprise me at all. I was just listening to your stories again and going buzzy. So
Well,
getting it's just beautiful, but it's, it's just something. The horses are here to help us with healing. Some animals are here, they've got a lot of wisdom and they want to share their wisdom with us. But yeah, some of them are definitely here to be healers. I think one of my friends runs these sessions and you can actually go and all the horses will just come around you and provide that healing for you. So
I
yeah,
think that
just
that's a
incredible.
beautiful, powerful, just even the image and that, what, just a very wonderful thing. So since I have to move us through our show, I have to go next to my question, which was about, you have something called the heart intuitive.
That's my business name, Cosmic Heart Intuitive. So that's the name of my website. If people want to connect with me there, www.cosmicheartintuitive.com.au. That's also my business Facebook name. People can find me there. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook under my name, Annie Bourke, Bourke. So all those different ways people can connect with me. And as you mentioned, my podcast, which is What Animals Tell Me, because they do tell me such fascinating stories. And I just feel because I hear the stories, it's my duty to help share their wisdom with the world. And I also interview people who work with animals in unique ways. So there's a number of episodes for people to listen to. And I also present free masterclasses for animal parents twice a month on different topics. So I'm doing one this weekend, which will be before you publish this episode. But they're also advertised on my Facebook and LinkedIn pages, so people are welcome to come to them.
And also for our listeners, if you didn't have a pen while she was talking, all of these sites will be on our description, so you can have everything right there at your fingertips. Tell us, can you share like some memorable conversations with animals, like your best of the best, or just a couple of stories about things you've experienced in animal communication?
Yep. Look, some of your listeners may have heard some of these stories from me before, because some of them have just had a profound impact on my life and my work. So one of the cats in spirit I was speaking to was blind, and his mum absolutely loved him, and he passed away in tragic circumstances. So she wanted to connect with him and find out that he was okay on the other side. And so we were having a lovely conversation and he was answering all her questions. And he said to me, rumple teaser. And
That's
I
a weird
listened to
name.
that word and I thought, what is he telling me? I've never heard that word before. And then I thought, is he trying to tell me Rumpelstiltskin and I just haven't heard him clearly? And I thought, no, that doesn't make any sense with what we're talking about. So I just dismissed it and thought I must just be hearing things. And I continued the conversation. And then he said it again very clearly. And I thought, okay, he's definitely trying to send me a message here. So I've never met his mum. She just emailed me the photo and the message and the questions. So I just sent her a little text message and said, was he ever called Rumpelteazer? Something intuitively made me think it might have been a name. And there was no response for a while. And I thought, oh dear, she's going to think I'm crazy. And then I'll get this message back. Oh, I'd forgotten all about that. And apparently when she rescued him, he was living with a dog called Rumpel. And he used to get in trouble for teasing the dog. So he got called Rumple Teaser. Now he was blind. He couldn't even see the dog. So he wasn't teasing the dog. But how clever of him to tell me that word, because that made his mum know I was absolutely talking to her animal and no one else. And so for me, that was just profound confirmation that I had connected with him. But it let me then experience that some animals in spirit now give me a code word, which makes no sense to me, but makes absolute sense to the parent. And then they know I'm talking with their animal. So another dog in spirit I spoke with, his code word was treehouse. And I thought, how can treehouse be a code word for a dog? I'm thinking you can't see a dog running up little steps up into a treehouse. Anyway, apparently it was the name of a property that his mum used to take him to. And over the road from the property was a whole series of nature walks. And he'd been on those walks from when he was a puppy till just before he passed away. So it was one of his favourite places to go. So again, a very profound message to his mum, confirming that I was speaking to him. Now, the conversation with him was very interesting because he his mum wanted to know who he was with on the other side, and he told me two names. And when I spoke to his sister dog who's living, she said, Mum will know who they are. And she said, Dusty, who was one of the names he told me he was with, is Duke. Now, I didn't know who Dusty and Duke were, and I didn't know who Charlie was, which was the other name. But when I spoke to the mum, she said, he's with Charlie and Dusty. There's no way you can have known that. And Charlie is her cousin's dog in spirit, who had passed over before this dog. And they'd spent a lot of time together, not because they particularly wanted to, but their mums were cousins. So they did spend a lot of time. And they'd actually wondered if the dogs were spending time together on the other side, and they are. So that was lovely. And Dusty was her first dog. And unfortunately, when they moved, they had to leave Dusty with a neighbour. And her next dog was Duke. And she'd always felt that Duke's soul was in her dog who'd just passed, but she didn't know the connection with Dusty. So this dog has been in Dusty, he's been in Duke, he's now been in his body called Rocco. And he said he's about to come back again. So he's going to have his fourth lifetime in a row with Mum as a dog. And he said to her to consider the name Rusty, which is the R from Rocco and the Usty from Dusty. So again, confirming who he is. And it's just so interesting because Mum has been seeing signs about Dusty and Rusty in the most obscure places. She went to visit her dad in a different state. She walked into his house. He's got a hat there with the name Rusty on it. Like just totally random, but just confirmation about the name and the fact that he's coming back. So stories like that are just beautiful. And as I said before, I love it when animals come back and people get to hold their animals again. And nothing can describe I call it the euphoria and joy of being able to hold that, your animal's soul in a new body in your arms again. It's such a gift when they can come back. So that's been very profound.
I hope my Rocky comes back. It's a nice. I lost him so traumatically because from the glaucoma and all the things, him not being able to see, I would carry him outside, and I went into my garden, and in that 30 minutes or less that I went in the garden, and he was, like 100 feet away from me. We're assuming it was a fox because we found the body 10 days later, where if it had been a bird, there would have been no body found, no bones. And it pained me so to not know where he was or what happened to him. And every day, and it happened the day before or 2 days before I was scheduled for cataract and glaucoma surgery. And I had been taking care of him, giving him drops 3 to 4 times a day and round the clock and picking him up and caring for him. And it took a lot of attention, but I was more than happy to do whatever he needed. But in reality, it would have been a little dangerous after I had the surgery to be bending down and picking him up and doing all these things you're not supposed to do. So I sort of almost felt like he left me on purpose, like that he'd gone and just decided that I would do better for her to go now than to. And it just kind of, I felt like it just kind of broke my heart. And this picture I had showed of you earlier of him, this is, 12 years ago when he was at my Mongolian shamanic initiation. When I was initiated as a shaman from a Mongolian visiting shaman, he sat the entire time at a pillow underneath the redwood tree, just like participating in the ceremony, that he was like part of this. And he wasn't a dog that was loved by a lot of other people because he was such a, yippy barker at everyone, but he was my guy. And I was so grateful to get his bones that were accidentally found by my niece's husband, who was doing a hike around the property looking for his son hide and go seek. And there they were. And I could just then make ceremony and bury everything and give him a shamanic departure. And I felt complete again. But those 10 days where I didn't know where he went or what had happened, it's a family member.
Yep. I get that you've had a relationship with him before.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you've got that bond there. And the fact that he was there for that shamanic ceremony, that's no coincidence either. So you've got a link there.
Well, I'm hoping he'll come back in could be a bigger body, little body, horse, I don't know. So we're getting down
But
towards the
but
end here.
sometimes because
Yeah.
it's their destiny, they just go when it's their time to go. So sometimes when they've completed their life lessons, they just go. And for some of us, that's way too soon. We'd love them to live for much longer, but sometimes they just go when it's their time to go. But yes, we can still connect with them on the other side. And I've spoken with a dog who passed over more than 20 years ago. So that's something they've taught me, that although the physical body is no longer with us and we mourn them, the soul endures, so we can connect with them at any time. So they've taught me that there is no true separation. They're there on the spiritual side, we're here on the physical side, but they're still there. So that bond between us endures. The love that we've had with them endures.
And I think that's also supports the theory that time isn't how we understand it. 20 years doesn't mean anything in the soul. That's maybe a minute or a drop, or
Yep.
it's a small amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm getting down toward the end of my last few questions because I'm trying to keep us in our show time. And I was wondering about, you were saying that animals also want to communicate to us. What is it that they want to try to communicate to us? Is it things about their own self that they want you to know, oh, I'd rather this or that? Or is it communications of teaching, or what were you feeling about that?
All of those. So some of them do want to tell us things about them. So if they want different food, or they've got a health issue and they want to tell us about that. Sometimes they try and hide health issues because they don't want us worrying about them. But sometimes they do share things. I've spoken with a dog, and Mum intuitively knew that something was wrong, but she didn't know what. And he actually had precancerous changes. So although it was nothing that anyone could detect if they did any tests on him, he knew that he was at a precancerous stage and that he wanted Mum to know. And then she could take him to a holistic vet and start on all of these supplements and natural therapies to help support him as well. And he's doing really well. So sometimes they do share stuff about health issues. We can talk to them and find out how they'd feel if we make a change in the household. So if we're going to bring home a baby, or we've got a new partner, or if we're thinking about getting another animal, we can communicate with them and just see what they think. They like to be consulted, and they like to know. If we just turn up with a new puppy or a new kitten, they can feel as though they've done something wrong to upset you and you don't love them anymore, and you've had to go and find another animal to love. And that can be really disturbing for them. So it's just explaining. And as I said, they do understand everything that we say, and they love nothing more than for us to have a conversation with them. So they'd love us to have a running conversation with them through the day. And they don't mind if we're talking about doing the washing up or putting on a load of washing or doing whatever it is. They just love hearing our voice, and they just love knowing what we're doing. One of my cats said to me, I just want to be involved. Like, they just want to know what's going on. To them, we are their world. And so anything that happens to us affects them. They're also very sensitive to our vibration of our body. So when we get sick, our energy level drops, our vibrational frequency drops. They can pick that up, and they often know before we're consciously aware that we're unwell. So they'll instinctively hang around more. They might lie on us. They might lie near us. They want us to get well as soon as possible because they have a vested interest in having us healthy so that we can look after them and interact with them. There may be things they want to tell us, like if there's nasty energy around the house that it's affecting them, they can tell us, because again, they're very sensitive to that, and they can let us know. Yes, some of them are here to teach us. And so once we can communicate with them, then they can tell us what it is they're here to share. My girl cat, who taught me about reincarnation, knows all about crystals. And so she was just able to tell me what I needed for certain people. So I'd say, okay, this person's got these symptoms. She'd tell me the crystal. I'd look it up in my book, and she'd be spot on. She just knows what she wants. And when she passed away, I asked her, what she wanted to do. Did she want to be buried? Did she want to be cremated? I'd never had a cat before that I'd spoken with that I could ask those questions. And she wanted to be cremated, and she wanted to be in a particular urn. And she wanted a bronze urn, and it had to be a certain color blue with silver on it. So I thought, okay. And so I asked the crematorium, and they only had pottery urns and they had gold on them, not silver. So that wasn't what I wanted. So I explained that this is what my cat wanted, and they didn't bat an eyelid. And the lady said, "Oh, I've seen something like that on eBay." Now, I'd never been on eBay, and I thought, I don't want to buy an urn that someone else might have been in before. But I did a search for funeral urns for animals, and I found this business in Australia that had only opened a month beforehand. And on the second page of their bronze urns, here's this urn that's hand painted enamel, the particular colour blue that she wanted, inlaid with a nickel pattern of flowers called Forget Me Not.
Oh,
Absolutely beautiful. And she knew I'd find it. And that some of the cats do that with me. They play games with, picking their names and giving me the first letter of an answer. So I have to work out what the answer is. But there's all sorts of things they can tell us, like, do they want to be a parent? Do they want to go and compete in competitions? So all sorts of different things that we can find out. Do they want to go away on the family holiday, or do they want to go into kennels? The lady with the dog who's coming back for the fourth time, the girl dog that she's got is an older dog, and mum was traveling across Australia to visit her parents. And so we had to ask the dog, did she want to fly? Because it would mean several hours traveling to the airport, time in the noisy airport, the flight, traveling at the other end, and then the reverse coming back again, or stay at home with a dog sitter that she knew, or go into kennels. No thanks, I'm going with mum. Had an absolute whale of a time, swimming in the beaches everywhere, exploring all these new places. Absolutely loved it. Fine with the flying. Mum was more stressed about it than she was. So there's so many things we can find out when we can communicate with them.
well, I want to say I have one last question. And I just want to say how much I'm really enjoying this conversation, because it's branching out into areas of animal communication that I didn't even think to go that far. So I really appreciate everything that we've been talking about. And what I want to ask in my last question, and how has this work changed your life?
In lots of many ways. And thank you for being so open to all the different topics I've talked about, and also to your listeners, because I'm aware that some of these concepts may be very new to you. I've been talking with animals now for over 10 years, so I've had a long time to adjust my understanding of reality, and particularly with life after life, with the soul reincarnation, with souls coming back for energetic visits, all sorts of things. I had no concept of this before I started my communication journey. So, yes, it's totally changed how I perceive life now and what I know. It's now my full-time career, and it is my mission to make a difference for animals and to raise global awareness of the importance of animals. So I want everyone to understand that animals understand everything that we say, that they have souls, because unfortunately that's not recognised in a lot of countries yet. They're still regarded as property and not as souls. Um, they are with us for a reason. There's no coincidence that an animal comes into our life. I also, my longer term vision is to open a rescue sanctuary for animals. I want to have somewhere where animals can come and be safe, but also to have people come on retreats and learn how to communicate with them, but also learn how to do healing and be healed in the process. So they're all the things that drive me. So that's the direction that I'm going in. I've written my first two books. I'm now writing my third book, which is talking about these aspects of soul journeys that the animals have taught me, because I wrote both of my books in 2018, and they've just taught me so much since that I need to write the sequels. So that's my next little lot of work as well.
Well, we would love to have you back when you have your next book ready to come out. We'd love to have you on the show again. I
I'd
hope
love to
the
come
audience,
back.
yes, I would love this. And I hope our audience has enjoyed your being here as much as I have. And I just want to know if there's any other little piece of wisdom or anything you want to share before we say goodbye to our listeners.
Just because I haven't talked about my books, I just wanted to say
Oh, yes, let's.
they're both available on Amazon as ebooks and paperbacks. So my first book is The Bridge to Animal Consciousness, and in it I talk about animal soul journeys and why they're here, what we can do to welcome a new animal to the household, what happens when we have to say goodbye, the benefits of animal communication, some of the amazing conversations I've had with animals in zoos and in the wild, and then practical things that we can do to help animals. And then my second book, Evolving Hearts and Souls, The Guide to Spiritual Awakening, is the book I spoke about where I wanted to share my experiences to help other people going through their spiritual awakening and spiritual development journeys. So they're both available. And people are welcome to listen to my podcasts and also to attend my free masterclasses, which they'll see advertised on my LinkedIn and Facebook profiles. And my messages for animal parents are understanding that they do understand everything that we say, that they're not with us by coincidence. There's a reason that they're here. We're helping them and they're helping us. And just to keep having a running conversation with them and to make the most of every day, because we don't know how long they're going to be with us. So making sure you've got lots of photos and videos of them and with them, and telling them every day that you love them and that you're grateful that they're in your life. They know, but they love hearing you telling them that you love them. They're really high vibrational frequency words, and that really does a lot for them. They actually help evolve our hearts. Having an animal with us, that's one of the reasons they're with us. They let us experience unconditional love, but it's evolving our heart as well. And that's part of our spiritual development while they're here. So there's just so many benefits from having an animal. And for listeners who don't have an animal, even if you just go to a zoo and connect with some of the animals there, they will change you. It's just a beautiful experience. They enrich our lives on so many levels.
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with you. And I want to encourage some of these parents who have young kids and feel it's too much work to get a dog or a cat, that their kids really will benefit tremendously tenfold if they bring an animal into the home.
Absolutely, because it's learning how to care for another being, but it's that interaction that you get, the unconditional love. They listen, they don't judge, they don't worry about your hairstyle or your clothes sense or who you choose in friends. They just love you regardless, and they just want that interaction, the one-on-one time, having that connection with you. It's so important to them to have that love and security of belonging to a family.
Yes, and it's a joy and the family will receive so much love in return. Well, I want
Exactly.
to thank you very much for being here today, all the way from Australia. I want to thank our listeners. I want to remind them to subscribe. We have over 1,000 subscribers now. We'd love if they share with our friends. If they have any comments, we answer all comments and would love to see them. And we have some more exciting guests coming up. And we're very excited to offer a podcast that has a variety and assortment of guests from all over the world that are speaking on all different types of topics. So I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll look forward to our next show and have a really wonderful week. And remember, share your stories because stories can heal. Bye.